US President Donald Trump signed an executive order on Wednesday pledging to deport college students on student visas and others who take part in protests calling for Palestinian rights. The civil rights group Palestine Legal said last month that our view is that Trump is in fact poised to escalate repression of the movement and undermine our constitutional rights to speak out and organize, with many of the same tools that he will inherit from the Biden administration and its unwavering support for Israel's genocide in Gaza. During the genocide in Gaza, according to Palestine Legal, these tools of repression have included surveillance, arrests, criminal charges, lawsuits, false definitions of anti-Semitism that prevent criticism of Israel, McCarthyite congressional hearings, and weaponizing civil rights laws in an attempt to threaten university funding. Meanwhile, Harvard University has just settled a lawsuit brought by Zionist students who allege that Palestine solidarity activism on campus is a form of harassment. Student-led Palestine solidarity protests during Israel's genocide in Gaza were cited as a source of so-called anti-Semitic rhetoric against pro-Israel students. In addition to awarding the pro-Israel student group financial compensation, Harvard University has agreed to implement the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's definition of anti-Semitism, which has long been a goal of the Israel lobby, in fact, of the Israeli government and its lobby, that institutions use this definition. And under the IHRA definition, criticism of Israel and the policies of the state, as well as Israel's official ideology, Zionism, are considered anti-Jewish bigotry. Harvard also said it would provide training on combating anti-Semitism and that its Office for Community Conduct would incorporate the IHRA definition when reviewing complaints of discrimination. The American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee, ADC, is one of many civil rights organizations that has expressed concern over Harvard's adoption of the IHRA definition and has warned the university of the dire consequences for Arab Americans and indeed anyone speaking up for Palestinian rights. In a statement, ADC said that, quote, with Harvard taking on this definition and setting a precedent, it is imperative that other universities do not follow suit. We reject the need for any legislative definition of anti-Semitism as it serves only to stifle necessary discourse rather than address true discrimination against Jewish people. And of course, the draconian government crackdowns on activists, students, and journalists engaged around justice for Palestine are escalating in many countries, especially in Europe, as I learned myself just in the last week. Joining us to talk about the repression of activists and journalists on and off college campuses is Abed Ayoub. Abed is the executive director of ADC. Abed, it's so great to have you back on the Electronic Intifada live stream.
Thank you, Ali. It's great to see you and have you back as well, and appreciate being on here with you and talking about this issue, which really over the past week we've seen how it can impact us directly.
Yeah, thank you, Abed. And really, before anything else, I want to take this opportunity to thank you and the American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee for the unqualified statement of support for me that you made after I was arbitrarily detained in Switzerland. Of course, it wasn't just a defense of me as an individual, but of all our fundamental rights. And knowing that you are there for us and our community really empowers us to keep doing our work. So I truly appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you.
So let's talk about the executive order signed yesterday by Donald Trump, threatening those on student visas with deportation if they criticize Israel or express a positive opinion of Hamas. As a civil rights lawyer and legal expert, how do you analyze the impact this could have on students, their right to free speech, and of course, their right to protest colonialism and genocide?
This is going to have a significant impact. And I think the impact is starting now, right? Where whenever there's an attack on free speech and freedom of expression, the first intent of those doing the attacking, the first intent is to stifle speech, to give that chilling effect. So we're already hearing from international students and many of the national student groups in the country that most of their international student members are backing off, or they're afraid to stay engaged, or they don't want to be at protests or be as visible as they were. That's the first immediate impact, and that shows the intention of this is to stifle these voices that are standing up for justice and for Palestine. Moving forward, the threat of taking away the visa simply because somebody is speaking up, this needs to be a concern for all Americans, everyone in the country, not just Arabs or Muslims or Palestinians. These tactics, giving this precedent to a president and authority to the government to deport you, arrest you, go after you, it's going to start with international students, but it's not going to stop there. We're going to see attack on journalists. We're going to see attack on others coming into this country, speakers. And I do want to keep in mind that there's two orders. There was the one signed yesterday, and then there was the one signed on his first day, which kind of went around the same lines of attack. The same, they were threatening us around the same thing. Sorry, my phone. And these coupled together, it's an attack on free speech. It's an attack on our identity and who we are. And it's attack not just on us, on our allies. Remember, we're not talking here that every international student is Palestinian or Arab. We have a limited number of international students in this country. So the international students they're going to be going after, they're going to see like a diverse, the diversity. They're going to see students from across the world. So it is something to be concerned, something that we should be watching, and all Americans should be concerned of right now.
Abed, there are probably international students watching this program. I know that you can't give sort of specific legal advice to anyone, but in a general sense, what are their rights? Do they have the same constitutional right to free speech as a US citizen or a legal permanent resident? What can you say about that?
What I would say is this: the strategy from the other side is to constantly move the goalpost. It's to constantly keep changing what anti-Semitism is, keep trying to redefine it, and trying to take anything we say to mean anti-Semitism. But what these executive orders do is they're going to be adding like a criminal component to things. So anybody that's here on a visa, whether a student visa or a B1, B2 visitor visa, if they commit a crime or they're arrested, most likely you lose your visa. So what we're going to see within the next 60 days is a layout from the Department of Justice saying, we are going to go after students for trespassing. We're going to go after students for graffiti or vandalism. That underlying charge is what's going to be used as the technical reason why they're going to lose their visa or they're going to be kicked out of the country. So my advice would be this: continue speaking up, continue taking part. I'll never say sit back and don't engage in your First Amendment right or don't stand up for Palestine or for what you believe in, but do it in a way where you're vigilant and not alarmist. So I would advise international students, for example, from shutting down traffic or taking part in these civil disobedience where you see folks, willingly get arrested. Like, don't take part in those. Figure out for the time being how you can best be involved, where you can be best used, because your voice is stronger when you're here, when you're committed, when you're getting your education, you're doing your part rather than being, removed and unplugged from the movement. So it's be vigilant, not alarmist right now.
That's important. Thank you so much, Abed. And I mean, meanwhile, Harvard University is already facing backlash over its adoption of the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism and how it's really bending over backwards to dangerously conflate Judaism with Zionism on behalf of Israel lobby groups and Zionist student organizations and the Israeli government itself. Inside Higher Education this week highlighted a statement written by the university's Faculty and Staff for Justice in Palestine group, which says, quote, "In accepting the IHRA definition, Harvard has proved itself to be amenable to political pressure rather than intellectual debate. A political scientist and the director of Harvard's Nonviolent Action Lab resigned in protest over the university's as he said, response to the genocide in Gaza and deepening repression of campus activism around it. He cited the use of the IHRA definition as the final push to leave in his open letter of resignation. How can civil rights organizations like the ADC intervene against the adoption of these policies, such as the IHRA, or protect students and activists if these policies are greenlit? I mean, we talked about free speech, but this is a different level.
This is a different level, and this is the first time we see someone trying to adopt a definition of hate. We don't see a definition of anti-Black or anti-Arab or Islamophobia. This is beyond any of that. And as we've been saying, this does water down and this does take away from the fight against real anti-Semitism. And a number of the students and a number of the individuals who've approached ADC for assistance over the past year and a half are actually Jewish students. They're not Arab or Palestinian or Muslim students. We've had a number of Jewish students call us because of what they're facing, right, and the anti-Semitism they're facing. So I think you're going to see that conversation happen from the Jewish community, they're also going to be negatively impacted by this. They're going to be discriminated against. They're going to be targeted as well by these institutions. And we have to work at putting together our legal strategies, putting together our approaches, but keeping pressure on institutions, state AGs, and other lawmakers, on a state level who have, are on the fence about this, but letting them know we don't need to adopt the definition. You don't need to go this route, and keep fighting that way. For those that have adopted it, it's going to be litigation. It's going to be like a legal strategy moving forward once it's implemented.
And Abed, tell us about, if you can, about what you're seeing from a bird's eye view on campuses across the United States. Are you seeing an uptick in complaints of harassment and discrimination and targeting of Palestinian students, Arab students, or other students who are simply exercising their right to free speech? What can you tell us about that, let's say, over the last 16 months since the genocide began?
We are seeing an uptake in discrimination and complaints against our students. I would say this: it's a coordinated effort. You're seeing it, you're seeing the harassment of our students at the smallest campuses and the largest campuses. I mean, it's a coordinated effort to go after them, to bait them, to get into arguments, and they fail, and then they just start harassing the Palestinian students, the encampments. But I do want to add this: on the most part, many universities, smaller universities, mid-sized universities that may not be in the media or may not be well known, they've been fair. The administration has, protected the students. They've given them space. But it's these hotbed areas like Columbia, NYU, Harvard that get most of the attention. You're seeing, the resources they're putting into quieting the movement. And unfortunately, they can take this strategy to other campuses. They have the resources to do it. But on the most part, we are seeing an uptick. Unfortunately, we're seeing it from professors, from the administration, from outside groups. It's coming from all directions. It has been coming from all directions over the past 16 months.
And if I could just follow up,
Yep.
Nora, and then, what we saw were during the first Trump administration, when Trump was imposing the so-called Muslim ban and other measures that would target international students or scholars, all these universities put on a pose of we are the champions of academic freedom and free speech, and we're going to protect and defend our students against this. You said some of the smaller or campuses, or the ones that are not in the limelight, are being fair, but what do you think the situation is now? Are these prestige universities like Harvard and Columbia basically on the same side as Donald Trump? Are they going to be ganging up on our students and scholars? Is that what we can expect?
Yes, that's what we can expect. The order that he signed on the 20th, the ideological exclusion order, that's a dangerous one. That allows for the cancellation of visas or for folks already in the U.S. if if there's disagreement with their ideology. We saw this post 9/11. They can deny visas now if they're they deem that the applicant has the wrong ideology or view of America. So going after these students, going after folks that have already admitted here, that's dangerous. We have to see how the university is going to apply, but we're already seeing courses canceled, lectures canceled. They're caving in. And the thing is, they're aligning with Donald Trump on this, but I do want to say it's not like Donald Trump is aligning with his base on this, right? We're also seeing many on the right, many from the Republican Party. They're like, hey, wait a minute. We value our First Amendment rights in this country. We value our freedom of speech, our freedom of expression. What the hell is going on here, right? We're going to see this. I think, become a universal issue where you're going to see folks on the right, folks on the left say, enough. We don't want our rights taken away for a foreign government. So we are noticing that trend, and you're going to start seeing some Republican lawmakers also come out, against what's happening, and I anticipate that happening soon.
And does ADC, you're not a political lobby group in the traditional sense, you're a civil rights organization, or you tell us the range of things you do, but are you talking to lawmakers across the political spectrum in the US, as narrow as that spectrum is? But
of course, yes. Look, we're nonpartisan. We talk to lawmakers and from both parties, and we engage with lawmakers from both parties as long as they stand principally where we are. And I think that right now is very important, because the way this administration is set up, the way our politics is set up, it's upside down. Our traditional way of communicating, traditional way of outreach is gone, and relying solely on the Democratic Party or Democratic lawmakers, that's not going to get you anywhere. So there is a realignment of a political realignment happening here of coalitions, allies on these issues, and I think the First Amendment is central to a lot of what we're seeing.
Knowing your rights is a very important tactic for activists and students, especially around Palestine. Can you remind us what our rights are? Do they still even exist under these forms of aggressive and intimidating repression aimed at civil rights, and especially aimed at Palestine rights campaigners? If you could break this down in terms of students or faculty on visas, on campuses on the one hand, and at the border on the other, what do we all need to know whether or not we are U.S. citizens, and how can we find out more and really, understand deeper what our rights are?
Well, look, as U.S. citizens, I don't anticipate they're going to be going after you for speaking up or for being vocal. As I said, that's your right. That's what you have the ability to do. The scary part is them finding a way to criminalize it, going for some underlying criminal action to get you and to target you and to make your life difficult. So U.S. citizens are going to have more protections, more options, particularly on the border, by saying, no, I don't want to give you the right to search my phone. You got to let me in, right? Those exist. Now, those that are on student visas or non-immigrant visas or immigrant visas coming into the U.S., their rights are a little bit more limited at the border. You could tell a CBP officer or someone, I don't want to give you my phone, but they're going to tell you, okay, we're going to send you right back, or we're going to cancel your visa. Or even like the ideological exclusion question. Oh, well, you agreed with so-and-so, or I see these pictures in your WhatsApp, we're going to deny you entry. So we have to be careful in that. Like what I would advise for those that are here on visas, when you're traveling into the country, delete WhatsApp off your phone, come in with a clean slate on WhatsApp, and have your things in order when you do enter. But those that are already in here, speak up, use common sense. Don't move away from protesting or having your voice heard, but understand that there is a movement out there against us that is acting in a way that's brazen, that's open, and trying really to defy a lot of what we're against traditionally when it comes to going after our First Amendment rights. So they are using tactics that are frightening, but we'll take them on. But there is a sense of responsibility we have to have. Like I said, don't take part in anything that could get you arrested. Don't take part in any civil disobedience actions. Don't take part in like any graffiti or any of that. Use your voice in the more traditional ways when it comes to protesting. And I hate saying that or putting limits, but I promise you, immediately if a visa holder is put in handcuffs, you can bet that they're going to lose their visa and they're going to be removed. So use common sense, get out there. And again, if you feel threatened or you feel they're targeting you, contact an organization like ADC will help you. If you're a professor or you're administrator and you feel like you're being targeted for your positions, even as a visa holder, you contact an attorney or ADC, because you do have rights as an employee of these institutions. So if you're on J1 or H1B, they can't be discriminating against you. And they, there's a whole subset of rights afforded to those folks as well as employees that will protect them.
Abed, I just want to sort of break this down a little bit further. So you talked about US citizens. Of course, they could find ways, and they have in the past found ways to harass US citizens or make their life more difficult. But in general, US citizens have the highest level of protection. They have to let you in the country. If you're coming in from overseas, they can't prevent you coming in the country, and
Right.
they can't force you to let them search your phone or your laptop. They are not allowed to force you to answer questions about your ideology or your religion or anything else. If you're a US citizen coming into the United States and they ask you for any of those things, you can say, I don't consent to any search. I don't want to answer any questions. Is that correct?
Correct. That's correct.
All right.
Right.
Now, you've already talked about people who are on non-immigrant visas. So that might be people like people who are on student visas, who probably are the most precarious, the most vulnerable, where you're saying use more traditional forms of speech, don't engage in any kind of civil disobedience where you might get arrested. And that sounds fairly reasonable. What about people who are legal permanent residents, otherwise known as green card holders? They're people who are allowed to live in the United States indefinitely without a time limit.
Sure.
What is there a gray area there? What
look,
can you say to them?
That's a great question. So green card holders you do have rights, and we all have visa holders, green card holders have right to their First Amendment. Now with the green card holders, there are rules that will trigger a removal or deportation. If you are arrested for certain things, you can then be deemed removable from the U.S. And that's when the retainers happen, the ICE detainers. So if a green card holder is protesting, hypothetically, let's say they're arrested for blocking traffic, and they're detained here at the Washington D.C. Prison or jail, a notice would be sent to ICE. If there's a working agreement between local officials and ICE, a notice would be sent to ICE saying, "Hey, we got a green card holder here. Here's some arrests," and then things would be done to put that person in removal, and they would ultimately lose their green card. So it is possible, if you are arrested for certain things, you can lose your green card. That has happened. And even if you have your green card, you're arrested, and then years from now you want to go get your citizenship, that arrest may come back again. You have to re-explain yourself, and you could be at a possibility of not being able to get your citizenship. So it is a something that green card holders need to be aware of. We have seen folks, not related to protests, but we've worked with many individuals who've lost their green card for reasons related to arrests or legal trouble.
And if whether or not you're a U.S. citizen, if police or the FBI come to your door, what are your rights? What should you do? Should you let them in, or should you call a lawyer?
Call a lawyer. Yeah, that's the quick answer. Is call a lawyer. Don't feel like you know more than them. Don't feel like you're smarter than them. They may be nice. You feel like maybe you have nothing to hide, but you never know what they're there for. You never know what they're trying to obtain, trying to get. So I would just call an attorney. Don't fall into the trap of thinking these guys are your friends or they're here. They may be the sweetest people in the world, but do not let them in. Do not engage with them. Call an attorney, have an attorney there with you, have the interview if that's what you want to do, but consult with a lawyer right away.
And I just want to ask, like, what numbers should people save in their phone to call, if someone's, in their 20s or, 40s, and they don't have like a lawyer on retainer, what's the best person to call?
You know what? We have a 800 number. It's 844-ADC-9955. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can call. There'll be a human that'll answer. Take your information, get a quick intake from you. Then our attorneys are immediately notified. And if it's something that is involving an arrest or an FBI visit or something, it is elevated, and we respond almost as fast as we can. And then we try to immediately connect you with an attorney in your city if we're unable to get out there.
That's really an incredible resource and so important to know. And again, I'm coming to some basics, and this is very much on my mind because I've just been through this, albeit in another country, but there are a lot of similarities. When I was arrested last Saturday, the first thing I said is, I want a lawyer. I want to talk to a lawyer. And I refuse to be questioned or talk to police without a lawyer. Is that what people should also do in the United States?
They should talk to a lawyer. Now, Ali, what you went through, you know, I was explaining to somebody here, what you went through is kind of like the accelerated process of what happens here. Unfortunately, in the US, you know, the end result is the same. But this individual, if this had happened to you here, the individual is spending weeks in a detention center or in a holding cell, right? So it's a much slower process here. And, you know, that's intentionally done just to keep you, you know, regretting your choice of ever coming to the US and having you leave. And rules are a little bit different in immigration holding facilities. They may not give you time to call a lawyer, or they may skip over your time or ignore you. So it is important that you have, you know, if somebody is here as a student visa and they're engaging or they feel, you know, they're at risk, share your information with a friend or with a family member that's in the US, copy of your passport, copy of your I-20, your basic information, just in the event, you know, something does happen, that person, that individual can turn that information over to an attorney and work to find you and work to assist you while you're, you know, in detention.
One other question I want to get, or one other thing I want to get you to comment on. If the FBI or the police come to your door, you've already said you don't have to talk to them. You're not required to talk to them. And in fact, you probably shouldn't. You should just say to them, if you want, give me your card and I'll get my lawyer to call you. And you
Absolutely.
don't let them in your house. You don't talk to them. But another thing that I've heard, and I want you to tell us if it's accurate or not, is that the FBI and the police are allowed to lie to you. They're allowed to lie about why they're there, and they're allowed to lie about what they know about you or what they don't know. But if you lie to them, that could land you in prison.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's not worth lying. It's not worth just having that conversation without a lawyer. Don't lie to them. Don't engage. Like you said, take their business card and go, because they will lie to you. Again, they will say, "Oh, we're your friend," or "We're here. We just want to make sure you're safe. We just want to make sure no one is threatening you." And then one thing leads to another, and you find yourself in legal trouble. So don't lie to them. That's why you should have the attorney there with you to make sure, you know, everything you say is in order and not going to get you in trouble.
And then we've been talking about the United States because of Donald Trump's order, but we have viewers all over the world. Many countries where we have viewers have very similar legal systems. Could be Canada, could be the UK. There are differences in these systems, but many of these general principles apply in those countries as well. And people who are in those countries who are concerned about these things should probably brush up on what their rights are in their own countries in terms of if they're at a protest and they're arrested, or which has been happening a great deal, especially in the UK, where we're seeing people charged for tweets, criminally charged for tweets, criminally charged for signs they're carrying at protests, where there are far fewer protections for free speech. So although we may not have the expertise about each and every country, it's a good general principle, do you think, Abed, for people to brush up on their rights?
Absolutely, absolutely. Brush up on your rights. Find the local attorney or find your local version of ADC or the National Lawyers Guild. They are, and in a lot of these countries out there, you know, attorneys ready to support and help. But you do want to have this information on hand, particularly if you're part of the movement and part of the activities and the protests that have been going on. Very important to do so.
And
Well,
if you could, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Nora.
If you could give out the number for your hotline once more, Abed, and also tell us how we can reach you online as well.
Sure. It's 844 ADC 9955. Our website is adc.org, and our email is legal@adc.org. So you can get a hold of us anyway, and we'll do our best to respond.
So adc.org is probably a good place to start.
Yes.
Abed, thank you so much for joining us. This is critical information, and we always learn from you. And thank you for the work you're doing for the community. It's never been more vital, and we hope to have you back again.
I appreciate you all. Thank you.